And Jim Sinacropi with you up here inside the FingerLakes1.com studios on another balmy Thursday afternoon in the Finger Lakes. And I'm fortunate enough to have holding on the line Ann Serling, the daughter of Rod Serling, best known for the television series The Twilight Zone. And he used to vacation with his family here on Cayuga Lake. And Ann's author of a new book called As I Knew Him. And she'll be signing at the Hotel Clarence at 2:30 this coming Sunday, July 21st. And Ann, welcome. How you doing today?
Hi, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. I should mention I know Bert Serling. He's a local lawyer here in Seneca Falls, and obviously a relative of yours, very well for many years. And I of course myself have watched every Twilight Zone episode, and I believe that your father passed away in 1975, so I was only 3 years old at the time, and yet, he still had an impact on my life as I've watched all those episodes, and also all my peers, and it's amazing the legacy that he's had, and it continues on with your book.
Yeah, it certainly is. I hear from people all the time how much they were influenced by my dad, or still missing him, and yes, and no one would be more surprised than my father that it's continued all these years.
Well, I know that there's so much content out there concerning your dad in terms of his creative work and his career and his impact and his status as a cultural icon. But what today I wanted to focus on with you, along with what motivated you to write the book, was some of the memories that you had vacationing on Cayuga Lake, and what he loved about the area. I believe he was born in Binghamton and eventually went out west, but then returned home. And you live in Ithaca, correct, Ann?
Right. And my dad was born in Syracuse, but grew up in Binghamton.
Right. So you have, obviously, having read the book, so many fond memories of vacationing here on Cayuga Lake, and I could relate because, I grew up in this area, and, what was it that you personally remember most about those summers on Cayuga Lake?
Well, they were just so magical, and my dad had a very idyllic childhood, and growing up in Binghamton, and every year when we would come east, my father would do this annual pilgrimage and go back to Binghamton and drive by his home, by his house that he grew up in, and coming to our cottage was magical for my father as well, as my sister and my mother. And the cottage was built by my mother's grandfather and her great-grandfather, and it was the one time where my father, although he was always still writing in his head, he really slowed down when he came east and relaxed. And I don't know, it was just a chance to get out of Los Angeles and all that madness.
Sure, for someone who seemed so comfortable on the screen, it appeared that he was most comfortable away from the spotlight and away from the West Coast. He preferred the East Coast.
Yeah, he really looked forward to this respite.
So what are some of the things that you remember doing in the area back in those days for recreation, or for dining, or what was a typical day like during one of those summer vacations on Cayuga Lake?
Well, it was always, just very exciting to finally, come east and drive down the dirt road and see the cottage. And we had some close friends that lived nearby that were sort of built-in instant friends. And, we would do typical childhood things, stage dog shows with our dogs, and, miniature golf and pasty freeze, and just all the things that I guess, you think of when you think of summer nights and easy, fun times.
Sure. And where exactly was that cottage located? Is on the southwestern shore, southwestern shore of Cayuga Lake in southern Seneca County?
Right, it's north of Ithaca, right, on the west shore.
Okay. And so you mentioned miniature golf and Tasty Freeze. Are any of those places still around that you used to go to back then?
There was a Terry's Tasty Freeze. I don't know if that's still there.
And how about some of the things that have changed from your memories back then to now? Because the cottage is still in the family, correct?
Yes, the cottage is still in the family, and every year we would go to Teganic Farms Inn, and of course that's still there.
Mm-hmm. And not quite as big of a wine industry along the lakes back then as there was today.
No, not back then. No, you're right.
So, yeah, it's. I mean, I would say that Rod Serling's probably one of the most famous people associated with the Finger Lakes region, and I can even remember. I probably became aware of the fact that he was a local. Had a local connection, probably around 11 or 12 years old, after I'd already watched some of these. And I just remember thinking, wow, this black and white image who entertained me and, scared me and, used to vacation on the lake the same way, that we'd spent time on the lake. And so, I felt a connection. And then, of course, later on, as I started golfing and met Bert Serling, I thought that was kind of neat too. It was maybe one of my first small world experiences where you realize what a small world it is.
Right.
So let's talk about what's coming up at the Clarence on it's July 21st at 2:30. You'll be there to talk with people. Books will be for sale and a book signing.
Right. I'll do a quick reading and then a book signing. Yes.
Okay, so there will be a reading. Do you know what passage you're going to read?
I have a few. And some relate to actually coming east and coming to the cottage every summer. So,
one of the nicest things that I took away is, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I could only hope one day that my daughter remembers me as fondly as you remember your dad. There was a genuine, love there that I don't know is commonplace maybe in today's Hollywood or pop culture world. I guess what I'm trying to say was your dad was very comfortable, seemed to be very comfortable living a more domestic life, yet like I said, he was forced to travel and interact with all these Hollywood types. Did he love his work?
I think, although he found writing difficult, actually originally he was going to major in phys ed, but it was after the war that he switched, and he was going to major in phys ed because he really liked kids, but after the war he was so traumatized that he switched to language and literature because, as he said, he felt that he needed to get it out of his gut, he needed to get it off his chest, and post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't even a term back then. But right. I think the writing came pretty naturally for him. Certainly there were, scripts that were quite difficult, but I think, all in all, he liked it. I mean, well, with The Twilight Zone, he wrote 92 of the 152 episodes, and he was writing them, whipping them out in, like, an episode in, 40-some hours.
Yeah, the volume of creative works that came, out of his mind and onto the paper in the form of a script or a book, is kind of mind-boggling.
It's pretty stunning, and I often think today, with a computer, he was so prolific back then, but how much even more prolific he would have been today.
Sure, one of the photos, I think it was in the book, maybe I saw it on the internet, was he has a dictating machine, which was probably high technology back then.
Yeah, he used to type with 2 fingers quite quickly, but then he switched to a dictaphone and would sort of act out all the parts, and then his secretary would type up the scripts.
Okay. Now, you're currently serving on the board of directors of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation, and also involved with the Rod Serling School of Fine Arts Fifth Dimension program. What's some of the work that you're doing with those organizations?
Well, the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation was actually started by a lot of my dad's childhood friends, and it's a way to keep the legacy going. And the Fifth Grade Dimension program is really an absolutely superb program taught by some really extraordinary teachers, where they watch episodes of The Twilight Zone and learn about prejudice and scapegoating and mob mentality. And it's pretty stunning how these fifth graders really get this.
Hmm.
And I actually believe that program would have been my dad's greatest accolade.
So, speaking of programs, that's one thing of the Twilight Zone. It wasn't just a straight science fiction or suspense show. There was always some type of meaning behind each episode, some type of social commentary, similar to the way that Gene Roddenberry Star Trek, I suppose, was written. What were some of the other works that he admired in his time, or some of the other maybe TV shows that he watched? I know he wasn't too fond of all the state of television back then, but what were some of the things that he did enjoy?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. It's hard to remember. I know there were a great many writers that he certainly respected, and certainly many of the writers on the Twilight Zone, they were a pretty seamless team. I'd have to think about that, what shows he watched back then. And I actually often think of what shows he would have liked that are on today, maybe a handful.
Sure.
I can tell you what he would have thought of some of those reality shows.
Yeah, the reality show craze was kind of interesting for the first year or two, and then it just exploded, and now it's kind of spamming, the airwaves and the cable lines, but there is also, nowadays so many more outlets for television programming with cable.
Right, back then there were only 3 networks.
Yeah, so the fact that he would command, a slot, with one of the 3 major networks for so much time, is really something. It's nowadays, I suppose, if you were to write a show, you could put it on the internet as a web show. You could get it on one of the 300, 400 cable networks. But back then, it was really, they call it the golden age of television for a reason. But there were 3 networks, and that combined with the local programming from the local affiliates, there really wasn't that much time. So to have a slot to speak to America like that on a weekly basis was really something special. But Ann will be at the Hotel Clarence again on this coming Sunday, July 21st at 2:30. There'll be a reading. There'll be a book signing. The book will be available for purchase at the event, $27 including tax. And you can learn more about Ann at AnnSerling.com. That's ANNESERLING.com. Is that the best place, Ann, to buy the book if somebody's not going to be able to make it to the Clarence on Sunday?
It's also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and a few independent bookstores as well.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see you on Sunday, and we hope you enjoy your stay here in Seneca Falls. I'm sure, do you make it up here often?
I don't, but I'm looking forward to it.
And yeah, Ann Serling, Sunday, July 21st at the Hotel Clarence, downtown Seneca Falls, 2:30. And thanks, Ann, for taking the time to talk about your dad, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
Thanks so much.
Okay, have a great day.